So it is January 27th, 2025, and we are in New Goloka, Hillsborough, North Carolina. We're reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 59, which is the killing of the demon Naraka, text 42. Ato muhurta ekasmin nanagae shutashriyaha yajopayema bhagavan tavarupa darovyayaha. A towel. And then muhurte, at the auspicious time, ekasmin, same, nana, various, agareshu, in residences, taha, those, shriyaha, women, yata, properly, upayeme, married, Bhagavan, the Supreme Lord, tavat, that many, rupa, forms, dadaha, assuming, avyayaha, the imperishable one. BBT translation. Then the imperishable Supreme Personality, assuming a separate form for each bride, duly married all the princesses simultaneously, each in her own palace. Didn't have anything about the time. Purport. As Srila Sridhar Swami explains, here the word yata indicates that each marriage was duly performed. This means, you ready for this, everybody? This is far out stuff here. That the entire company of the Lord's relatives, including his mother Devaki, appeared in each and every palace and attended each and every wedding. Since all these weddings took place simultaneously, this event was surely a manifestation of the Lord's inconceivable potency. So how many Devakis were there? 16,100. It wasn't just that there were 16,100 Krishnas, there were also 16,100 Devakis and Vasudevs and all the other celebrants. When Lord Krishna, going on with the purport, when Lord Krishna does things, he does them in style. You can definitely tell that these purports were not written by Srila Prabhupada when you run into things like that, because that's not the way the Prabhupada would talk. Yes? So it is not astonishing that the Lord simultaneously appeared in 16,100 wedding ceremonies taking place in 16,100 royal palaces, accompanying in each palace by all his relatives. Indeed, this is the way one would expect the Supreme Personality of Godhead to do things. After all, he's not an ordinary human being. Now that is an interesting statement because most of the religions of the world don't have such expectations. Srila Sridhar Swami further explains that on this particular occasion, the Lord manifested in his original form in each of the palaces. In other words, to take part in the wedding vows, he manifested identical forms, prakasha, in all the palaces. Okay, so we're going to read commentaries. So first from Srila Sanatan Goswami. Ataha indicates auspiciousness or all. Simultaneously, he married them because they were women. That's also an interesting statement. Because of the nature of women, they would envy each other, being rivals. As many as there were women, he manifested as many forms to marry them, 16,100 forms. All these forms were real and eternal. Or, as if having many forms, the one Krishna married them all simultaneously because he was full of all powers, Bhagavan, and therefore inexhaustible, Avyayam. And we'll go to Srila Jiva Goswami. He married them simultaneously in different palaces at an auspicious moment like sunrise. He took as many forms as there were brides. This one form appeared in many places. It was not a different form. It will later be said, Chitram Bhaitad Ekena Vapusa Yuga Pat Pritag Graheshu Dwasta Sahasram Shriya Eka Udavahat. It is quite amazing that in a single body, Lord Krishna simultaneously married 16,000 women, each in a separate palace. That's Srila Jiva Goswami quoting from Bhagavatam 1069-2. Because of his inconceivable energy, he had an inexhaustible form. And going to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Returning to Dwarka, Krishna married all the women at the same time, Muhurta Asmin, because the experts in astrology told Krishna that the most auspicious time, Lagna is the rising sign, whatever constellation and nakshatra is there on the horizon when the sun rises, for marriage was at that very moment. Krishna manifested identical forms, Prakasha Vigrahas Tavad Rupadaro, of himself to marry all the brides. Though Krishna had one body, it appeared in separate forms, and he controlled all of them. One should not explain the phrase Tavad Rupadaro as simply a multiplication of bodies, Kaya Vyuha. This is corroborated by Narada Muni in a later chapter, Chitram Bhaitad, this is one. That's the same verse that was quoted before. We won't read it again. According to Sridhar Swami, the phrase Yato Payame, married properly, implies that Krishna's entire company of relatives, including Devaki and others, also appeared in each and every house simultaneously. By Krishna's inconceivable energy, all of his associates also manifested identical forms. The word avyayaha, imperishable, means that in all circumstances they were complete, not present only in a partial expansion. The Srimad Bhagavatam confirms this point. The Prakasha forms of Krishna are not different at all from the original form of Krishna. Ato muhurta ekasmin nana gare shutasriyaha yato paye me bhagavan tavad rupa dharo vyayaha. Then the imperishable Supreme Personality, assuming a separate form for each bride, duly married all the princesses simultaneously, each in her own palace. This is quite a concept of God as a person, and the jiva is a person. First of all, most of the religions on the planet, they either just don't understand at all that God is a person, they have some impersonal idea, or their idea that God is a person is very incomplete. But here we're understanding that God is a person, that he has his own form, and yet Advaitam Achyutam Anadin Ananta Rupam Avyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha. The Ananta Rupam, he has unlimited forms. Here we have Avyayam, inexhaustible. His forms cannot be exhausted. That doesn't just mean getting tired. You know, like now in my old age, I get tired much more easily than I did when I had a younger body. But we don't mean that kind of exhaustion. Of course, Krishna sometimes likes to sleep for fun. But we mean that his forms cannot be exhausted. Each of his forms is unlimited, just like when Mother Yasoda tries to tie Krishna up, and she can't do it, and she sees the universe inside him. So that form is unlimited. But it also means that he has unlimited forms. And what is also really far out is that we can also have lots of forms. The liberated jiva, now the liberated jiva can't have as many forms as Krishna. We're not going to be unlimitedly manifest in every atom or something like that. But here you see these jivas having 16,100 forms, existing simultaneously, doing different things with different people, simultaneously. Sounds like, you know, some science fiction book or movie or something like that. Are we existing simultaneously in different parallel universes? Or where does this idea come from? It comes from the fact that actually that can happen. You know, and I think I can speak for everybody, aren't we frustrated by our limitations? Right? I mean, this particular body that I have, like Prabhupada says, everyone has some extraordinary talent, and to serve Krishna with our talent means successful life. So I have, less like everybody else, I have extraordinary talents, and I also have extraordinary deficits. Isn't that true for everybody? I'm not talented in everything. Like I've never been particularly talented in sports, or even particularly interested. It's a deficit. I have things I do really well, and I have things I do really poorly, and then I have some things in between. And it's frustrating. It'd be nice to be good in everything. And then we can't do everything. You know, if you've got a female form, you can grow a baby inside you. If you have a male form, you can't. Different forms do different things. You know, I can't fly like a bird. I can't swim like a fish. I'm restricted. My Prabhupada would often talk about how the animals all have different propensities that the humans don't have. But we can't do everything. We're limited. So we have that frustration. And I can only be in one place doing one thing at one time. I mean, when I was a kid, I really wanted to be both in school and at the beach. It was like, I always wished that because I found school excruciatingly boring. But I knew that I had to be there. So I thought, well, I wish I could be in school learning my lessons, passing my tests, but I could also be having a day at the beach at the same time. And I could also be reading a book. You know, those of us who are skilled multitaskers, like I can do 3, maybe 4 things at once, but only sitting in one place. I can't do them in different places, but I want to. Haven't you all wanted to do that? I mean, I really appreciate living by this part of my family, you know, my daughter and my granddaughter and grandson-in-law, but I wish I could also live near my sons. But I can't do that at the same time. And then, like, my next travel plans, you know, I can only travel to so many places. I can't even in 1 year, I can't possibly visit all the places that people invite me and that I want to go to. I just can't. It just doesn't, can't do it. But I want to. And then what about our frustration with other people? You know, in my relationships with other people, even people I love a lot, there's things about them that frustrate me. There's things about them that I love and I appreciate, and there's things about them that drive me crazy. Correct? Everybody have this experience? Even your most near and dear ones, even the people that you totally love, that you want to spend your whole life with, there's things about them that drive you nuts. Like, why do they leave their dirty clothes lying around? Or, you know, why do they forget their keys? Or something about them that's not, that we just like, oh, God, I guess I just got to tolerate that. And people often think, well, if I just could find the right compatible person, everything would be beautiful. But there's always going to be things. So why do we have these two desires? Why do we have this desire to be able to do a multiplicity of things simultaneously, and a desire to have a relationship with the person who's exactly suited to ourselves? Because both of these things are actually existing, and they're our natural situation. This morning I heard again, I don't know how many times Prabhupada says something like this, but it's over and over, that Krishna consciousness is natural to the soul. That love of Krishna and Krishna consciousness and a relationship with Krishna is eternal. All right, let's first look at Krishna as the perfect person. So Krishna as the perfect person simultaneously exists in a multitude of forms, uncountable forms. He pervades everything, and he's separate, but he's separate in uncountable forms. It says he has as many forms as the waves of the ocean. Uncountable, inexhaustible. Some of them manifest briefly, and many of them are eternally manifest. Some of them show only certain aspects of himself, like his Narayana form doesn't show the full range of rasas. He has them, he just doesn't manifest them. Just like, if we're at a job, we're not manifesting all aspects of our personality. It's not that it's not there, but it never manifests. But then he also has different types of incarnations, some that are only partial expansions of himself, and some that are all identical forms, some that are slightly different but with the same potency, like Balaram. I mean, Krishna and Balaram are really interesting because they'll sometimes have different opinions about the same thing, and sometimes very strongly held different opinions about the same thing. I know myself, I sometimes have two strongly different opinions about the same thing, yes? I really want to do something and I really don't want to do something at the same time. And with Krishna, that's exhibited in two different personalities. I want Subhadra to marry Duryodhana. No, I want Subhadra to marry Arjuna. No? But they're the same person. And then sometimes, like here, we have the same form, all of the forms getting married to all of the princesses at the same time. We're all the original Krishna. Now, were they all absolutely identical? No. Because, and this is when I was thinking about giving class today, and I was thinking, because yesterday we ran through a gazillion verses, and I was tempted, right? I was talking to you, and Dristapu was saying, if you want, you can go back and read some of them, because some of the Acharya's commentaries on those were amazing. But when I saw this verse, I'm like, I want to speak on that. So one of my favorite verses is from the Bhagavatam, and this is Canto 3, Chapter 9, Text 11. This is spoken by Lord Brahma. O my Lord, your devotees can see you through the ears by the process of bona fide hearing, and thus their hearts become cleansed, and you take your seat there. You are so merciful to your devotees that you manifest yourself in the particular eternal form of transcendence in which they always think of you. And Srila Prabhupada in the purport says, this attachment, I'm not reading the whole purport, it's long, I'm reading a part of it. This attachment of the devotee to a particular form of the Lord is due to natural inclination. Each and every living entity is originally attached to a particular type of transcendental service because he is eternally the servitor of the Lord. Lord Chaitanya says that the living entity is eternally a servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Therefore, every living entity has a particular type of service relationship with the Lord eternally. Eternally means it doesn't have a beginning also. This particular attachment is invoked, not created, invoked, by practice of regulative devotional service to the Lord, and thus the devotee becomes attached to the eternal form of the Lord, exactly like one who is already eternally attached. This attachment for a particular form of the Lord is called Swarup Siddhi. The Lord sits on the lotus of heart of the devotee in the eternal form the pure devotee desires. I want to go also to one of my favorite. This is from Srila Sanatana Goswami, commenting on Canto 10, Chapter 14, the prayers of Lord Brahma, Text 7. Now, it's interesting important actually to understand the context. This is Lord Brahma's praying to Krishna. In Chapter 14, what's happening? He's trying to make amends for what he did in Chapter 13. And what happened, though? What Leela is happening here? He stole the cows, right? And then he comes back, and what happens? He sees Krishna's manifest himself as the boys and calves, and then what do all the boys and calves do? They turn into Vishnu. They manifest as Vishnu. And each Vishnu form is separate. And who's there with each Vishnu form? Vishnu forms are not alone. Each Vishnu form is? Who else is there? All living entities. Each Vishnu form is surrounded by a multitude of living entities of all different varieties, worshiping the Lord. So this is what Lord Brahma sees. He sees Krishna with the cowherd boys, and the same cowherd boys, ostensibly the same cowherd boys and calves. And this bewilders Lord Brahma. Why? Why is Lord Brahma, the creator of the universe, the creator, the manifester of all the bodies, of all the living entities, why can he not grasp the fact that there's an identical set of calves and boys? But why couldn't there be an identical set? Yeah, but why is it impossible? You can have identical twins, identical triplets. I mean, why? But what specific things beyond his ability? It's contradicting an existential, ontological fact that each jiva is individual and unique. You cannot have two identical jivas. Now, actually, those cowherd boys and calves were not exactly like the original jivas. The difference was in the relationship. They had a slightly different relationship with the other residents of Vrindavan, correct? They weren't actually absolutely identical. But Lord Brahma said, you can't have two identical jivas. And he couldn't grasp this. And he actually fainted. And then he sees all these Vishnu forms also surrounded by all of these different living entities and energies who are each worshiping the Lord in their own way. So this is the context of what's going on. So in this verse 10:14-7, Srila Sanatana Goswami says something relevant to these different forms expanded to marry the brides. He says, who can in detail enumerate your qualities? No one can, because you have appeared in the world to give benefit to all the jivas. The meaning is this: the Lord reveals qualities suitable for the benefit of that jiva. The jivas are unlimited, and their natures are unlimited, and their conditions are unlimited. Thus, your qualities that you reveal for each of them are unlimited. It is not possible to count them. No one can count them. So that Krishna is revealing there's certain forms of the Lord that each of us are attracted to, and certain qualities of the Lord that each of us are attracted to. And when Krishna's dealing with a living entity, he's dealing with them according to their particular desires. So each of these 16,100 queens, they're all different people. And their particular way of responding to Krishna is a little different. In Ujjwala Nilamani, Srila Rupa Goswami describes 350 or 360 different categories of gopis, and ultimately he says and queens, and he says there's as many categories of consorts of the Lord as there are living entities who are consorts of the Lord. But he also describes different manifestations of Krishna. He describes, takes the four basic personalities, Dhirodata, Dhiraprasanta, Dhiralalita, and he divides those into different categories, and those into categories of categories of categories. And each of these queens desires to see the Lord in a particular way. So although these forms of Krishna were, quote unquote, identical, the relationship they had with the queens was not identical. The relationship Krishna has with Rukmini and the relationship he has with Satyabhama, the relationship he has with Jambavati is somewhat different. And with each of these 16,100 queens also. And he's doing different things in each of these weddings. I was once at an educational convention by this one publisher, and they were bragging that in all of the schools that use their materials, that at like 11:03, you could walk into the third grade classroom in any of these schools, and the teachers would all be doing exactly the same thing. And I thought, that's disgusting. You know, why bother having a teacher? Just have a robot. I mean, what you're supposed to do if you're a good teacher is you have your lesson plan, you have your materials, but when you get in the classroom, you have to adjust that lesson according to the needs of the students at the time. I'm just remembering years ago in ISKCON Soho, it was Madhvacharya's appearance or disappearance day, and I had prepared for 2 weeks a detailed philosophical class about his particular philosophy. You know, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has an Achinta Bheda philosophy. Madhvacharya has a somewhat different philosophy. And I prepared 2 weeks, I prepared detailed class, and I'm sitting there giving the class, and after 10 minutes, I'm noticing that everyone looked like a deer in headlights. And I thought, I'm not going to give this class. I just threw out all my notes and talked about something else. You know, we should be responsive. So Krishna's also, Prabhupada says Krishna's very responsive. Now, even though the weddings all took place at the same auspicious time, which is something else we could talk about, of course, still there were going to be differences in the ceremonies. And Krishna's responding differently. And there's going to be different relatives there. Each princess is going to have her own parents and her own part of the family. Krishna's family side is the same in every wedding, but the bride's family is going to be different. And I'm sure each woman wanted a somewhat different dress. I don't know if they had wedding cakes, but if they did, I'm sure each one wanted a little different wedding cake. And a little different this and a little different that. And Krishna's responding to that. And that's what we're looking for in our relationships. We're looking for the person who's perfectly responsive to us and who's exactly what we want, because we're really looking for Krishna. We're really looking for Krishna, who can be everything to everyone. Krishna can be everything perfectly for me and everything perfectly for you and everything perfectly for you and everything perfectly for you, all at the same time. All right, now what about the jivas? So this is a question that periodically comes up in my preaching. You know, can I choose what I want to be in the spiritual world? Is it like an assignment, like under the Communist Party, where they just told you have to do this kind of work? But I don't want to do that kind of work. No, you have to do it anyway. Or, you know, sometimes people are in families with really controlling parents, and the kid's like, I want to be a musician. No, you have to be a doctor. You know, so we might think like that. You know, that Krishna's like, okay, let's see, we don't have enough peacocks. I want you to be a peacock. And, you know, we have enough cowherd boys. And so now, but I really want to be a cowherd boy. No, sorry, taken, right? Prabhupada consistently says that the role that we play in Krishna's Leela is our own choice and our own taste and our own desire. But then we may think about, well, you know, I have this body due to my own choices and desires in previous lives, and I'm not really that happy with it. Anybody here like totally ecstatic about the body they got in this life? So, you know, I've never, even when I was young, I never, you know, looked in the mirror and went, oh my God, that's perfect. You know, and as I said, we're so limited in what we can do, and so people think, well, in my spiritual form, am I going to have this kind of limitation? And our resounding answer is no. You can do 16,100 things, at least, simultaneously in different places at the same time. What do you think about that? Now, not just at school and at the beach, but at least 16,100 places at the same time, doing different things. All the Devakis weren't doing exactly the same thing at the same time. Again, there were different families. The queens had different families with different names and different personalities. They were going to be responding differently. This also happens in the Bhagavatam when Krishna visits Shrutadev in Bahulasva. He's there with a bunch of devotees and rishis, and he goes to both houses simultaneously, and all his companions do too. this concept comes up in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, where Gopal Kumar says, Narada Muni, everywhere I go, I see you. He says, I exist in all these places simultaneously. And I had one of my senior godbrothers asked me the other day, did the Pandavas go to heaven or the spiritual world? I said, both, as evidenced by Brihad Bhagavatamrita. They're existing in both places. Plus, Arjuna also exists as, Nara with Nara Narayan. He has many different. And this is what's also interesting. Here we have these relatives of Krishna are in different places doing different things, but in the same form. But you can also, as a liberated jiva, be in different places doing different things in different forms. There's associates of Lord Chaitanya who are male brahmanas who are simultaneously female cowherd girls in Krishna's pastimes. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati says some of us are just in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, some of us just in Krishna's, some in both, some are also in Ram Lila. You have living entities, they're monkeys in Ram Lila and Brahmin men in Lord Chaitanya Lila, and then they may be cowherd boys in Krishna Lila. Some of Lord Nityananda's male associates are gopis. They're different. We have Uddhava, who lives eternally in Dwarka, in the spiritual world, but he also lives in Vrindavan as a plant. That's even a different rasa. Right? Uddhava is given as the example of someone who's in a dasya ras mixed with sakya ras, but a plant is in shanta ras. And the Pandavas also exist around Shamakund as trees. Well, now there you go. My conclusion after preparing for this class is, why am I attached to the material world? That was my primary thing I wanted to communicate to all of you. Why? Why am I attached to this world? Why am I attached to my very flawed identity, very flawed, very limited identity, with my very flawed, very limited ability to do what I want to do, with who I want to do it, when I want to do it, with my very flawed relationships with others? Why am I attached to that? Why am I so attached to my false ego? Why can't I just surrender to Krishna and actually be in this, my natural environment, where I can be expanded into 16,000 forms doing different things and in different places and different relationships, and have this relationship with the perfect person that is exactly how I desire, and everything done at the perfect time also. It's funny, Krishna is time. For him, there's no question of good and bad time, but yet everything is timed perfectly. It's one of his qualities, expert judge of time, place, and circumstance. And my only conclusion as to why I'm still materially attached after so many lifetimes is just abject idiocy. That there's just no other explanation for it. And I'm just begging all of you that you can please bless me, that I can give up my completely idiotic material attachments and actually embrace the fact that what Krishna is offering us is so much more glorious than anything we can possibly conceive of or want or experience in false ego. So questions, comments, additions, subtractions, chastisements? Yes, Maharaj. Uh-huh. So Krishna appears, for those of you online, Mara said that, he was quoting how Prabhupada said there wouldn't be enough cloth in the world to dress the universal form, so he comes as a deity so we can dress him. Of course, the universal form is covered in many garments, but they must have been cloth from, we can't dress him. Who dresses the universal form? Ha ha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.